Hi everyone. Today I'll be doing one thing and one thing only, which is talking about bad empanada, going mask off, and being bigoted against, among others, trans women, disabled people, furries, and other minorities in the global north, the first world specifically. I'll be talking about that, and that is the only thing I'll be talking about. And to keep this video short, I'll spare you my usual introductions. There will be details in the description of this video if you want to know more, as well as past work that I've done on bad empanada in particular. I've done more than my fair share of research regarding him, including writing book chapters and individual essays about him. So if you want to know more, just look at the works cited in my video description or in the pinned comment of this video. I just want to say also, this video is unscripted, so it's purely off the cuff. It's just me, speaking my mind. I've tried to limit this to only having a couple of visual aids, but I'll be going over them, reading them, talking about how I feel. I'll give some sources, I'll cite more in the description, and then go back around and look at these sources again. So it's going to be very conversational. It's going to be a very non-linear video. That's how non-scripted videos work. I didn't really want to devote a script to this because I've devoted multiple scripts to this person in the past. But suffice it to say, Bad Empanada is a Nazi. Bad Empanada is a Nazi who is saying, I'm not bigoted, you're the Zionist. And in reality, if you attack people who are fighting Zionism, that makes you the Zionist, bad empanada. That fascists support Zionism, however, inadvertently, indirectly, by accident, what have you. And bad empanada is doing all of this while taking money by inviting conservative people into his audience and going mask off in ways that aren't really that different from Charlie Kirk, from Matt Walsh, and various other individuals besides. He is a first worlder. He is someone who lives in the global south currently in Argentina, and he has done various work supporting that part of the world. But you can't be like, I'm a freedom fighter, and then punch down at people in the global north. It is possible to do that, and that's what he's doing, and he's doing it with vigor. So all of that will be discussed in an unscripted manner, but I just wanted to put the disclaimer up front. This is unscripted, but we will be talking about that and various other things having to do with Bad Empanada and my history with him in this video moving forwards. So, all I wanted to address here was the fact Bad Empanada says one day ago, specifically October 1st, 2025 at 1:14 p.m., the date now is 7:36 a.m., October 3rd, 2025. Blue sky is where you go when you have 15 self-diagnosed mental illnesses and want to be in an echo chamber with other people who also have 15 self-diagnosed mental illnesses. To which I say, Bad Empanada, you might as well call my friends and I useless eaters at this point. And Bad Empanada says, of course, I legitimately think you should be in the mines. So I say, why? I support Palestine and all areas in the global south exploited by capital. I support ending climate change, capital, the ruling class. But I also think trans women are women and people with disorders are people, furries are human, etc. These aren't mutually exclusive concepts. To which Bad Empanada doesn't respond. Bad Empanada is only on the platform to hate post, to generate traffic, to funnel people towards him. And as a friend of mine pointed out, the best way he's discovered for this to happen is to go mask off. And him going mask off is something that I've acknowledged before, but now he's doing it quite nakedly. What brought all of this to my attention and saw me responding to him at all was Socialism for All saying, don't be that guy, to a post Empanada wrote, spend 5 seconds on this American liberal hug box and you'll learn to appreciate the coming Trump crackdown. Go to town, Donald. Post all you want. I'm not the Plural Systems pup who will be going to camp. And Bad Empanada says, in response to Socialism for All saying, don't be that guy, it's very funny how sensitive American liberals are. They're on top of the world. Billions of people are oppressed for their benefit. It's say you don't care about them. They welcome the pain. They're indifferent to coming back at them, and they go ballistic. The original Zionists. Except, again, the work that I've done has pushed back against Zionism in the past quite extensively. For example, Justice for Palestine was written October 13th, 2023. What's going on in Palestine is wrong, but so is the larger geopolitical argument trying to justify it, but it's quite simply genocide for the same old reasons, bourgeois hegemony. I, for one, will not stand idly by while the same old proponents of imperialism make the same old tired arguments to serve the elite. These are people's lives ground into dust by the great machine of capital as having become an even larger and more fearsome monster as time goes on. Even if those in the present fall into the state of exception, targeted for termination inside state-manufactured prisons by old ghouls like the American establishment, the Mother Territory and her allies, we should not be silent as they siphon all life from the land and its peoples, places, and ecosystems. The elite and their supporters need to be exposed for what they are, the great destroyers of our age, the ultimate threat to all life on the planet, purely to enrich the smallest number of persons they can. In line with today being Friday the 13th, think of the elite and nation-states as the undying slasher that both never seems to die, but is always in decay. Israel is fascist, and fascism is capitalism in decay. American liberalism and the neoliberal market demand eternal crisis that leads to decay that must be aided and supported. To that, the Israeli state is the 21st century version of the Nazi war machine, echoing Hitler's Wehrhall push, and later his war into Poland and Russia, appeased by Britain and America as they shove into Gaza. War pimps and jailers speaking pretty words. The enablers of Israel are little more than murderers who come to you with smiles. They will destroy the global south and then set their sights on mercenaries on the global north, which is already a police state rife with fascism, as the imperial boomerang sails home. I wrote that going on 2 years ago now, at the start of the spearhead of the current state of the genocide in Palestine. People have to remember that the genocide as it's going on now is just one part of a larger structure. So the genocide was occurring before October 7th, but October 7th is when the Israeli state went mask off and started to accelerate it. Accelerationism is a facet of genocide, and that's something to keep in mind. This dates back centuries, and arguably further back than that if you look at, say, the Christian Crusaders versus Arabs and Jews in Jerusalem. That's something to keep in mind. Those more ancient medieval forces evolved into what capitalism became, the Protestant ethic, and various other forces at work. We don't really have time here to go over those just because I want to focus on Bad Empanada. Another piece that I wrote more in the middle of things, between October 2023 and the present date, Judas Priest, Invincible Shield and Zionism. This piece considers the Zionist potential of the new Judas Priest album, Invincible Shield, i.e. from a post-colonial lens. So despite me being a fan of their music since high school, so if you're curious about that, I critique all manner of people. I critique people in popular media. I critique politicians. I look at things through a lens of current events and through popular media as going hand in hand. My approach to media is holistic. And also, furthermore, with Bad Empanada, they go on to say, this is no different in regards to Socialism for All saying don't be that guy, in regards to what Bad Empanada said, saying that he hopes that Donald will basically genocide people like me. This is no different than whining at being called a cracker. The entire world is raped for your benefit, you get punched up on, and you immediately act like it's beyond the pale. Blowback is coming, folks. Should have fought for your victims instead of doing nothing. And again, I've done plenty, in terms of my writing, in terms of the work that I support. So, I've done writing where I call out the genocide directly, right as it was happening and is happening. I've continually mentioned the genocide up until the present state in time. I have written about it through peripheral or lateral topics that might not seem directly related, but at the same time, Zionism bleeds into everything because capital bleeds into everything, and Zionism is a facet of capital. So do I sound like a white liberal? I don't think so. But that's what Bad Empanada is doing. They're doing this because they want to funnel supporters specifically from the right to their cause. They are basically sucking up or funneling groups, conservative groups, into their audience to make money off of that. And they're saying, oh, well, you're all liberals. So they're basically impeaching us, dehumanizing us, saying we're something that we aren't, that they're okay with seeing destroyed, so that they can reconcile with what they're doing, which is taking Judas silver, effectively. You know, they're making money by doing this, and to make themselves feel better, they dehumanize us. That is classic abjection, and they do it in this statement here. You may as well call my friends and I useless eaters at this point. Of course, I legitimately think you should be in the mines. Why? R.E. I support Palestine and all areas in the global south exploited by capital. I support ending climate change, capital, the ruling class. But I also think trans women are women, and people with disorders are people, furries are human, etc. These aren't mutually exclusive concepts. Again, and in other words, I'm not a white liberal. I'm white. I'm a trans woman, but I am completely against the genocide that's going on in Palestine, and not just in Palestine, but also in Sudan, various other parts of that area of the world. Genocide anywhere is bad. Genocide is not activism. Slurs aren't activism. And I go on to say, slurs aren't activism, dude. Ableism and furryphobia isn't activism. Transphobia isn't activism. You're just saying Nazi shit at this point. And it's true. You know, it's like fascists historically are modular in their construction. Umberto Eco, there's 14 different points that they basically encompass according to his model. There is only one fascism, according to Umberto Eco, but it goes through different constructions, and those 14 points account for that. Different fascists did not get along with each other. Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler were technically members of the Axis powers. They did not necessarily get along with each other. They stole from each other. They betrayed each other. There were fascist components to Stalin in the USSR, despite the fact that, you know, Stalin was, you know, one of the heads of state for that particular country or union of different Soviets. They were still exhibiting fascist tendencies. The same year that the Institute of Sexology was burned to the ground, Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute of Sexology in 1933 was burned to the ground. You also had making queer people homosexual men, but in effect, all of the progressive policies that were enacted that benefited women and queer people more broadly, not just homosexual men, in the Soviet Union were made illegal. This wasn't just Stalin, you know, there were other people involved, other conservative elements or fascist elements of that country that saw to the making of queerness illegal in the USSR and taking women out of the military and putting them back into the home. These are conservative, ergo fascist things. They decayed back into those conservative positions. And it was basically the state model trying to compete with the United States, and it lost. It lost insofar as it became fascist, and it revoked all of these different things to do that. So, you know, fascism isn't just something that existed in Nazi Germany. It was borrowed from the United States. It was enacted elsewhere in the world, including China. Hooliganism, for instance, calling, you know, queer people hooligans. It's a similar sort of label as sex pest. Oh, you don't respect consent, you're a criminal, you're a sex pest. The language is often very vague, calling them obscene. So this kind of thing is seen all throughout history, and just because you fight Hitler's Germany doesn't mean that you have any better principles or principles that aren't clouded by various forms of betrayal. In the case of the United States, they fought the Nazis, but they fought the Nazis because the Nazis decided to push west and not just go east. Stalin and the Soviets, despite the fact that they beat the fascists in World War II, also made queer people illegal. They put women back into the home, out of the military, and denied the actions, their military service, erased their history, and things only continued to go downhill from there. The collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, the rise of Putin, these are all failures of the socialist state, what Marx would call the dictatorship of the proletariat, because developing communism was something that occurred in steps, and the Soviet Union never got past the first step. You could say it barely even got started. So there's room to critique all of that, and just as there's room to critique someone like Stalin, someone like Mao, we can also critique Bad Empanada. And despite the fact that Bad Empanada writes these essays that a lot of people up until recently used to defend him, now he's just like, well, I wrote those and I moved to Argentina, and so I guess, I don't live in the first world, so I'm not a first worlder anymore. Okay, well, the Nazis moved to Argentina, dude, and you're acting like a Nazi, which is to say, yeah, Trump, kill them all. So you're saying fascist talking points here. At this point, I don't really want to devote any more energy to Bad Empanada than I have. I will link to various things in the description of this video if you want to see everything that I've written on Bad Empanada. Some of the stuff I'll have to post broken links just because it goes to book chapters that I've written, and those book chapters are things on a website that YouTube doesn't allow because it's 18 and up. A lot of the work that I do, I'm a sex worker, I'm a pornographic historian, so a lot of my research is ensconced within pornographic history, is something that I research, that I take part in, that I invigilate. So needless to say, a lot of my criticisms of Bad Empanada come from my position as a sex worker, as a trans woman who has difficulty finding work, as someone who has been denied housing, and I know people worse off than myself. People in America, it's like, we're not just all white liberals and we didn't do anything. Plenty of people, my friends, the people that Bad Empanada is calling useless eaters, which he doesn't deny, by the way, include homeless people, include sex workers, include women, people of color, indigenous people. So Bad Empanada is a Nazi at this point. He is not this champion of the people, because if you start breaking bread with fascists, you know what that makes you? Fascist. And this is what he's doing. It's not even dog whistling at this point. This is just knives out fascism. Everything that I said about him has basically been proven correct by this one sentence. Of course, I legitimately think you should be in the mines. So yeah, at this point, I have said all that I really want to say about Bad Empanada. Bad Empanada is fascist. If you endorse genocide, that makes you fascist at the end of the day. I don't endorse genocide. I am 100% against genocide. I have devoted years of my life to speaking out against genocide. My name is out there on my work speaking out against genocide. I am against genocide to such a degree that just me being trans and openly identifying as trans, if they passed that law in Michigan, making it illegal for trans people to exist online, that puts me at risk. If that's not being against genocide, then I don't know what is. I was against genocide years ago. Even as a child, I was against genocide, and it took time for me to reach a point where I felt like I could talk about these things publicly. But even back as far back as 2014, I was speaking out against genocide. I was speaking out against the sins of capital. So I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and my research has been doing that for this time. I've sent money to different groups, including to Bad Empanada himself. And I've reached out to him, I've messaged him, and the only thing he wants to do is basically bullhorn shout, "Come here, fascists, look, I'm saying the fascist thing," so he can get their money. And then anyone who basically says, "Hey, what the fuck, man?" He's like, "Shut up, white liberal. You got what's coming to you. you have self-diagnosed mental illnesses and you are a plural systems pup who will be going to camp. And I guess, just finally to end the video with what he said there, plural systems, that speaks to people who are having, like the medical term for that is split personality disorder. That's an older term. I think there's actually a newer term than that is slightly less problematic. But plural systems, these are terms that are used by people who would be described by various members of the medical industry, the medical profession, as having split personality disorder. Plural just means that you are plural. You have multiple headmates within the same system, the system being your body. So Bad Empanada here is being ableist. Pup is speaking, of course, to furries. So he's basically saying, oh, you're degenerate. You'll be going to camp. Again, it's not even dog whistling because it's literally just him pointing the finger, knives out. And he's the T-1000 with his stabby finger. There's no degree of disguise here. And he's acting like, he's this really great, like, freedom fighter. If anything, it kind of reminds me of, like, Che Guevara or something. Motherfucker thinks he's Che Guevara, and he's exhibiting some of the conservative aspects of characters like that. Castro, Che Guevara, Stalin. If you look at older forms of Marxist-Leninism, they did tend to be homophobic. Like, historically, that's how it was, and that's how it's playing out here. And he's not just being homophobic, he's also being ableist, he's also being furryphobic, and furries are anti-capitalist. A lot of my friends are furries, and it's comorbid too, because a lot of my friends aren't just furries or disabled. My partner Bay, for instance, is indigenous, furry, disabled, neurodivergent, because again, it's important to recognize that plural people don't necessarily even consider themselves disabled. Sometimes they just consider themselves having a neurodivergent condition. So that's something important to recognize as well. But Bad Empanada is just like, forget throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He's throwing out the entire nursery and basically just saying, oh, you're all American liberals. Okay, well, my partner Bay is from New Zealand. My partner Victoria is from New Zealand. And I have various other friends throughout the world that I've worked with who aren't from America, who are against genocide, and who also, incidentally, are against what you're saying. Guilt by association, collective punishment, these are war crimes. A witch hunt does not make you righteous in any way except that it's self-appointed in a fascist manner. There's not really anything else to say. Bad Empanada's basically betraying his principles as an activist to act fascist and take Judas pay. It kind of reminds me of not just Benny Morris, who was someone who researched the Israeli state only to eventually take Israeli gold. You also had Norm Finkelstein, who would speak out against Benny Morris, who, as it turns out, is transphobic himself. So Bad Empanada is basically aping Norm Finkelstein to become not just like Norm Finkelstein, but also like Benny Morris. He's more Zionist than I am. Because if you attack the people who are punching up against Zionism, you want to know what that makes you, Bad Empanada? A Zionist. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. And it's not surprising though, because fascism employs DARVO and obscurantism. They'll point the finger at other people. He'll punch down while saying that he's punching up. But in reality, he's the one who's most guilty of it. It's unfortunate. It's a sad state of affairs, but it is what it is. If this video got your attention and you're not familiar with my work, once again, you can refer to the links in the description, which will take you to various essays and resources where you can read more about how Bad Empanada is a traitor. Someone who, if you're a fascist, you're a traitor. Even if you're a little bit of a fascist, then guess what? You're a little bit of a traitor. But he's someone who's been growing his channel in ways where it's not so little anymore. He's not just some random person on 4chan or Reddit. He's someone with a big channel, and for all the good work that he's done, he's poisoning the well of his own canon. and his own corpus is being tainted by fascism. That's how fascism works. It muddies the waters, and that's entirely his fault because he's been called out for doing this for years, and he won't stop doing it. If anything, he's doubling down and only accelerating his accelerationist talking points to punch down at me, all of my friends, and people, just more broadly who are different than himself, and treating them as degenerate. You can find out all about the work that I've done studying Bad Empanada by following the links in the description. I'm not super active on YouTube, but if you want to share this, if you want to like, share, and subscribe, leave a comment, support me through various donation links, I'd appreciate that as well. In any event, thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and until next time, good luck.